Michelle, and I'm going to teach a little music theory today. I am a piano teacher, and this is my beautiful piano. Today we're going to talk about intervals. So, intervals are a very foundational concept in music theory, and a lot of things are based on intervals. So I want to explain what intervals are, the different types of intervals, and just get you a little more familiar with this vocabulary talking about intervals, okay? So, an interval is the distance between two notes. I'll start by just showing you the interval of a third. This is a third. 1, 2, 3. These notes are 3 notes apart from each other, and a third can be anywhere. So, all of those were thirds. So thirds it's the relationship between two notes, and it travels. It doesn't necessarily need to be a middle C or any other C. It can be any note. It's just the relationship between one note and a note that's above it, or one note and a note that's below it. Okay? So we have lots of different intervals, and intervals have kind of visual characteristics when you're learning to read music. So learning to know what the intervals look like is very helpful for sight reading. Thirds are always matching. Thirds are always a line and a line, or a space and a space when you're reading the music notation. So that's something that you can look for, and you can start to recognize what thirds look like. Any odd numbered interval will be matching. So thirds, fifths, sevenths, ninths, they're all going to be matching, like both lines or both spaces, both of the pitches will be on the same thing, but it could be anywhere. Intervals can also be unison. So we'll start here at the beginning. A unison is when two different instruments, two different people are playing the exact same note. So here on the piano, I'm playing middle C and I'm singing la. So that is the distance between this note on the piano and my note that I'm singing is a unison. Okay? So unisons are kind of unique. We don't really talk about them that often, but it's an important part of intervals. So unison. Okay, next interval is a second. So a second is two pitches that are right next to each other. They're very crunchy. They're very dissonant. The most famous second is in this song. Second right there. That sound, that clash between two notes that are right next to each other, kind of arguing with each other for your attention. Second, okay? So I already showed you thirds. Thirds are consonant interval, so they sound pleasant. They sound stable. And seconds have to resolve to thirds. It's one of their jobs. All right, so thirds. Fourths. Fourths are notes that are 4 apart. Here comes the bride. Fourths are unique. Back in the day, like when Bach and Beethoven and Mozart were writing music, and there were a lot of rules, fourths were actually illegal. Not against the law, but against the rules. Having something move in parallel fourths is like breaking all the rules of tonal harmony and part writing. Can you hear how kind of... I can't handle it. To me, that sounds like a cat scratching on the chalkboard. Like, parallel fourths are very a really important interval in harmony, basses get to sing a lot of fourths because of the distance between 5 and 1. Anyway, don't want to say too much, get you confused. We're talking about intervals now. So seconds, thirds, fourths, fifths. Fifths are open. Fifths are hollow. Fifths are Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. That's the distance, okay? Parallel fifths go along with parallel fourths in this illegal category. So if you have parallel fifths in a song, you're breaking all the rules. I can't handle it. I don't like it. But sometimes composers will do that on purpose. Now, okay, sixths. Sixths are a consonant interval, like thirds. In fact, they're kind of the flipped version of a third. This is C and A, but if you flip it on its head, that's also C and A. So thirds and sixths are like harmonically related to each other. They kind of have similar sound and similar quality harmonically. Sixths are beautiful in parallel sixths. I love a melody that moves in parallel sixths. It's like a little duet. It's just so satisfying to me, so peaceful. Okay, sixths are 6 notes apart. And then the last interval to discuss would be a seventh. This is a seventh. This is a seventh. They're very, very dissonant. Sevenths are the flipped inversion of a second. So just like this is very dissonant, if you take those two pitches and flip them, they become a seventh. Okay, so sevenths have that clashing quality, and they must resolve. They must resolve. You can't just sit on a seventh. You gotta go somewhere. Sevenths are really often used with the dominant harmony and resolve to the tonic. Anyway, sevenths. They just sound wrong. Sevenths are really, really useful when you get into extended tertian chords, which I'm not going to explain today, but just know that that really strong, irritating dissonance that you hear with a seventh, it has a lot of harmonic pull. It forces a lot of things to happen. And so we use sevenths in lots of different ways in chords and writing music. All right, so those are the basic intervals. And then once you get beyond a seventh, you reach kind of a place where we're just repeating ourselves, because a seventh is the top of all of the pitches in a major scale. When we get up to 8, it's an octave. An octave means this is C, this is also C. It's the same note. So an octave is related to a unison. There's more distance, but it's the same pitch, okay? So octaves, also called, no, it's never called an eighth. It's called an octave, and it's represented by the number 8, but it's never called an eighth. All right, so 8 notes apart, we call that an octave. We hear octaves all the time in music. Very, very, very useful interval. That's consonant. It's often used to sort of emphasize that note so that you hear it more strongly, because you're hearing it in 2 different places. You're hearing it high and down low. So anyway, octaves are great. All right, So when we get bigger than octaves, we're basically just doing the same interval with an octave added. So here's a second, and a ninth is just adding one octave to that. So C and D is a second, C and D up an octave is a ninth. So they are related intervals. Seconds and ninths are kind of almost always the same thing. And often we will simplify a ninth and say it's a second. The only time we really use a ninth as an interval is when we're talking about extended tertian harmony and we need to have that distance of a ninth from the bass note. But generally a ninth kind of is equal to a second. All right, tenth. Tenth is the octave relative of a third. So here's a C and an E, and here's a C and an E. A tenth is a very consonant harmony. It's very beautiful. It's very famous. Okay, we use parallel tenths in a lot of music. Parallel tenths, parallel thirds, parallel sixths, they're all quite beautiful, harmonious, and a really nice duet line. So parallel tenths is something that you might hear in two melodies that are moving together. But a tenth is kind of the same thing as a third. It's just a third that's spread out with an octave in between. 11ths, you've guessed it, it's a fourth that's bigger. Oh, still sounds bad. That is a fourth. All right, fifths become 12ths if you add an octave. Anyway, and so on and so on and so on. Sixths become 13th. Anyway, beautiful, beautiful. Parallel sixths become parallel 13ths if you spread it out. You've got sopranos on one end and basses on the other. And then 14ths, I mean, theoretically it exists. We don't ever really talk about 14ths. They're just sevenths. So that's a major seventh. That's a major 14th, but we would just call that a major seventh. They're kind of the same thing. And so on and so on. So once you get to 15, you don't call that a 15th. You would call that 2 octaves. Okay. Anyway.